start. Thank you. A very good evening. Welcome to Lansdowne and Woodbury Avenue. I hope you've had a good day. The weather hasn't been so good, but it's certainly very warm inside church this evening. So but we hope you have a really enjoyable and challenging evening. Tonight is our Big Questions evening, which we host once a month. It's a very different approach that we have on our Big Questions evening. It's an opportunity to really ask questions on a given topic. And tonight the subject that we're looking at is there more to life than this? We've got Lewis Green from UCCF with us, who will be talking, will be singing, and also then we have a Q&A session, question and answers. So as a result of what Lewis is saying, an opportunity to either text in, and we've got the numbers up on the board to text any questions you have, to really something that's perhaps on your mind that you think related to what Lewis is saying, that would be helpful to put Lewis on the spot and have him answer those questions. So a very different evening, but we hope you enjoy it. We hope you enjoyed the teas, coffees and the donuts, and there will be further refreshments after the service as well. So what I'd like to do, Lewis, perhaps if we can, some know Lewis, and Lewis was with us last time in December when we had our last Big Questions evening, but just really to ask him a couple of questions to really get to know him a little bit better. So give us a bit of your background. We were talking just before the service. Just let us where you're at now and how you got there.
Right, yeah. I currently live in Oxford. I grew up over near Cambridge, and before that I studied up in Durham University, so I kind of moved around a bit. Where I'm at now, as you mentioned, I work for UCCF, which is a charity that supports Christian unions in universities. So Christian unions are groups of Christian students in universities who get together to make Jesus and the claims of Jesus known in their university settings. And as a charity, what we do is we help them in that work. So one of the things that I do with my job is I get to travel around and meet students and talk to students. Sometimes I get to play my guitar as well, like this evening, and talk to them about the truth of the Christian worldview and discuss with them and maybe challenge some of the things that they think. And in it all, we're trying to persuade people that the claims of Jesus are worth investigating. So
you obviously you know Michael Otts, yeah, who's been and done very many university missions, Gareth as well, and but different in that you use your music. So what's the link? How is the link? How effective is the link that you've got between your music and sharing your faith?
I think music's a really wonderful thing. I'm sure lots of us would probably agree with that. Music is such a big part of our lives, isn't it? Whatever kind of music we listen to, songs and songwriting particularly, but I think all music actually is a very powerful tool for communicating what people think. And so I think the link for me is that I see my music and songs, I suppose the ones I write, but also ones that I listen to, and I play other people's songs as well, because I think other people have got very interesting things to say. I think they're a great vehicle for kind of challenging what people think. People often sit in a university cafe or pub or something, and they'll listen to you play a song, and they'll kind of maybe pay attention to it. Sometimes in a way that they won't if you kind of just stand up and give a talk. So I think that's one reason. The other link is that I think as a Christian, the Christian faith has something to say about every area of life, and that includes the arts. And I believe we're made in the image of a God who's wonderfully creative. He's made us to be creative in his image. So I think music is worth pursuing and trying to excel in, because it's something that brings joy to us as humans, because we're made to find those things significant. I think they point beyond themselves. And So I think the whole enterprise of the creative arts, but specifically music, is really worth pursuing.
So in your journey in becoming a Christian, how significant was music to you in answering or challenging you in some of the questions that you had?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I grew up in a family where I was taken to church regularly, and in a sense I always had some kind of Christian faith, you might say, from a young age. But when I went to university particularly, I suppose I did start to question some of those things in a slightly more, you could say, rigorous way. And particularly some of the difficult questions that I suppose everyone has to process, but particularly if you are someone who would call yourself a Christian. There are lots of challenges in the world out there as to what things you think. So I suppose I challenged the things I thought I believed at university more than ever. And one of the really powerful things that persuaded me then and still persuades me now was the significance of things like beauty and meaning, and things like music, although not music exclusively, seem to resonate with us as humans. And to me, I'll talk a bit about this later, to me those things have to point to something. They have to point to the fact that we're not just here by accident. So that was for me something that continued, still today actually, it affirms the things that I believe about who I am, made in the image of God, and who we are as humans, and our responsibility to our Creator and all those things. Music, I think, seems to really resound, forgive the pun, with all those kind of ideas.
And it's interesting what you're saying about that appreciation of beauty, because I've heard Christians say that as when they become Christians and appreciate what you were saying, God's creativity, God's creation, is that we almost see creation in glorious technicolor rather than in perhaps in shades of grey. So
there's a lovely quote by C.S. Lewis actually. He talks about the fact that when the Christian worldview provides a way, we don't just see sort of Christ and we see God for who He really is, but we also see the world for what it really is in light of who God is. And so he talks about the idea of you trace the sunbeams which illuminate the world back up to the sun. So when you see something in creation or in art or beauty or music, whatever it is.
Lovely picture. Yeah. Well, let's try and chase those sunbeams tonight and point to our Lord. So you're going to lead off with sing some songs. You're going to sing 4 songs, I think, but interjecting that with some comments. That's great. So whilst we're listening to Lewis, as I say, if there's anything that you think, I'd really like to ask a question on this. I mean, in the previous Big Questions evenings, we've had a whole raft of questions asked that cover a whole range of different issues. And then we've posted those on the website, I believe. Is that right? So that we can see the answers, and it gives an opportunity to challenge our thinking tonight. Number is on the screen. You can either do it through the phone or do it on the forms which are on your chairs, and then we'll collect those after Lewis speaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I think we're going to do things slightly differently tonight. So. I hope that's okay with you. What I'd like to do is actually expand a bit on some of those things I was just saying. As you just heard, I'm going to sing 4 songs, and I'd like to reflect, and I'd like you to reflect with me on what some of those songs teach us, or maybe provoke us, what kind of things they provoke us. Under this whole heading, is there more to life? I'm going to start with a song which was written by an Irish singer-songwriter who I was actually at university with. Although I've sort of lost touch with him now. It's a guy called Justin Grounds, and he wrote this song soon after arriving at university in Durham. This was now over 10 years ago, and I think reading between the lines of what he is saying in this song, I think he's asking that question that we're looking at tonight: is there more to life? It's a very open-ended question, isn't it? So can I encourage you, the words will come up on the screen to the songs that I'm singing, so do feel free to read them if you can't quite pick out exactly what I'm singing. But as you listen, why not just have a think as to why is this an important question at all to consider? Is there more to life? What kind of answers would we naturally give to that question instinctively as we consider it? So I hope you like this song. This is called Stillness.
Walking through this town I'm in, the streets move fast, they're full of cars, and everybody's downing drinks in expensive trendy bars. I'm lost, I cry as suits rush by in this crazy paper money land. My feet dance nostalgically, the memory of driftwood and sand, looking for the stillness between the waves of the sea, trying to hear the song that will show me who to be. And all I'm trying to find is a sanctuary true. Can I find one in you? You said you had no time for wasters in this commercial make or break. Before the movie starts, you need to find the icing for your cake. So you take a wife, yeah, this is your life, it's only you who chose it. You're still so full of loneliness, just make sure no one knows it. Looking for the stillness between the waves of the sea, trying to hear the song that will show me who to be. 'Cause all I'm trying to find is a sanctuary true. Can I find one in you? We dance, and our colors fly, our hearts upon our sleeves. And children laugh and old folks cry as our stories interweave. And as we move, I look at you, I see you're smiling strong. In the midst of turning circles, we found stillness in our song. Looking for the stillness between the waves of the sea, trying to hear the song that will show me who to be. And all I'm trying to find is a sanctuary true. Can I find one in you?
Thank you very much. I wonder what kind of things you thought about. Is there more to life? I think it's quite a provocative song, isn't it? I just shameless plug for my friend Justin. If you like that, you can go and buy his stuff. It's on iTunes. But do you see what he's saying in that song? He's kind of at university, experiencing the richness of life, you could say. He talks about, walking past bars where people are having a great time. He talks about dancing with someone whose eyes he looks at and they smile. He talks about the kind of story of life, doesn't he? Children laughing all the way through to old folks crying. And in the midst of it all, he's asking this question, what am I here for? You see what he says? He says, I'm looking for the stillness between the waves of the sea, saying life kind of comes in waves, and what I'm trying to find is that kind of peace, that satisfaction, that thing, that place that I was meant to be. And I think he's basically asking, is there more to life than just all this stuff that seems to be endlessly going round the treadmill? As I said earlier, I think songs have a lot to teach us, and you might like to think, either as I'm talking or as you go home tonight, about what kind of claims people who write the songs that you enjoy make about whether or not there's more to life. You might be into very kind of highbrow music like One Direction or something like that. Very thoughtful, provocative lyrics saying that we should just live while we're young. Or it might be something that I guess is a bit more classically political, something like Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, the kind of people who classically write provocative songs. I think everyone really, in the songs they write, is trying to offer us an answer to that question. What's life about and what's worth pursuing?
I hope we'll see tonight, and in the next 3 songs that I'm going to play for you, that the question, is there more to life, is not just one that I think instinctively we all have. I think it's one that we do need to find an answer to. And what I'd like to do is play you 3 songs to illustrate why I think it's such an important question. Justin, as I said in that song, he says he feels like he's wandering around because he hasn't found the place where he's meant to be yet, and he's longing for something more. And the next song I'm going to sing to you, I think illustrates one of the places where we, if you like, invest our hopes about what life is all about. As we ask that question, is there more to life? What are the kind of things that we fill life with, and what are the answers we give? This song is by a singer that you might know called Lily Allen. Do any of you remember the John Lewis advert, I think 2 years ago, The Hare and the Bear? She kind of sang over the top of that. She's a singer, a songwriter, sort of pop star. She's a fashion designer. She's sort of general all-round celebrity. And she wrote a song a few years back now, which I'm going to sing for you, because I think it's incredibly provocative as we think about this question, is there more to life? She's someone who, on the face of it, humanly speaking, has achieved, I'd venture, far more than any of us in this room have in terms of success. And yet in this song, she makes some interesting reflections, so I hope you like it. This is called The Fear. I wanna be rich and I want lots of money. Don't care about clever, I don't care about funny. I want loads of clothes and I want loads of diamonds. Hurt people die when they're trying to find them. I'll take my clothes off, it won't be shameless, 'cause everyone knows that's how you get famous. I'll look in the sun, I'll look in the mirror. I'm on the right track, yeah, I'm on to a winner. And I don't know what's right and what's real anymore. And I don't know what I'm meant to feel anymore. When do you think it'll all become clear? 'Cause I'm being taken over by the fear. Well, life's about film stars and less about mothers. It's all about fast cars and cussing each other. But it doesn't matter, 'cause I'm packing plastic, and that's what makes my life so fantastic. I am a weapon of massive consumption. It's not my fault, it's how I'm programmed to function. Look in the sun and I'll look in the mirror. I'm on the right track, yeah, I'm on to a winner. But I don't know what's right and what's real anymore. And I don't know how I'm meant to feel anymore. When do you think it'll all become clear? 'Cause I'm being taken over by the fear. Forget about guns, forget ammunition. I'm killing them all on my own little mission. I'm not a saint, but I'm not a sinner. And everything's cool as long as I'm getting thinner. I don't know what's right and what's real anymore. I don't know how I'm meant to feel anymore. When do you think it'll all become clear? 'Cause I'm being taken over by the fear.
the face of it, has most of the things that a lot of the time we think fill up our lives and make them meaningful. Did you notice? I mean, there were some more provocative things there, weren't there? Like the way she's going to get famous by kind of getting in the papers. But there's lots of other stuff, wasn't there? Just having security, having money, having people appreciate you. See what she says? You know, I'll look in the sun, I'll look in the mirror. If I'm well known, if I'm well liked, then life will be okay. And yet she also says, doesn't she, in the chorus, but actually I'm struggling to know what's right and what's real anymore. In this kind of quest to find meaning in life among the stuff that I'm trying to amass, you know, the diamonds or the fast cars, whatever it might be, she says, do you know what, I'm really afraid. She says, I'm afraid that that's actually not enough. What if there is more to life? I wonder if we can relate to that kind of approach. How many of us would say that some of those things are the things that we live for? And I do want to say there are a lot of good things, aren't there, that I bet we would list in terms of what life is all about. Relationships, love, the approval of others, security. They're the kind of things we think make the world go round, don't they? But you see, Lily Allen also, while affirming those good things, she names the elephant in the room, doesn't she? Did you notice? She says, but are they enough? We're off the back of Christmas, aren't we? Christmas, classically, the time when a lot of those great things are kind of distilled down. Christmas is like espresso life, isn't it? Really, really intense, you know, family, friends, good food, good times together, at least for lots of us. Although not for all of us. And yet, the January blues set in, don't they? And we realise that actually kind of life goes on, we're back to normal, and are those things enough? Lily Allen, did you notice? She says, I'm a weapon of mass consumption. She's like a bottomless pit. It doesn't matter how much stuff she pours into her life, she's never full. Think about the songs that you listen to. It's great, isn't it? For every song about love and satisfaction through finding relationships with others, and there are plenty of those, there are just as many, aren't there, about heartache and the hurt caused by breakup. Or for every song about the fulfillment of being materially wealthy, there's another song about the trappings of success and the nature of material wealth. See, I think this question, which is kind of what I want to illustrate with this first song, is there more to life? We've got to admit, whether we think about it most days or not, it's a question that really matters, doesn't it? The late English columnist Bernard Levin, he wrote for the Times and the Mail in the early part of last century, and he sort of summed it up once like this. Let me read it for you. He said, countries like ours are full of people who have all the material comforts they desire, together with such non-material blessings as a happy family. And yet, he said, we seem to lead lives of quiet and at times noisy desperation, understanding that there is a hole inside us. And however much food and drink we pour into it, however many motor cars and television sets we stuff it with, however many well-balanced children and loyal friends we parade around the edges, it aches. Or maybe, to quote another musician, Mick Jagger summed it up, didn't he? I can't get no satisfaction. Is there more to life? Well, I think if we look at the stuff that we think life is all about, we'd have to say, I hope so. The second song I'd like to sing, though, is the second reason why I think this is a really important question for us. Is there more to life? And it's a song by a band called Death Cab for Cutie. It's quite an odd name, isn't it? And in some ways, the name of their band illustrates one of the things they sing about. This is by a guy called Ben Gibbard. And he's illustrating here the second reason why I think this is a really important question. Is there more to life? This is called I Will Follow You Into the Dark. I hope you like it.
Someday you will die, but I'll be close behind. I'll follow you into the dark. No blinding light or tunnels to gates of wine. Just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. In Catholic school, as vicious as Roman rule, I got my knuckles bruised by a lady in black. I held my tongue as she told me, son, fear is the heart of love. So I never went back. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. And you and me, we've seen everything to see, from Bangkok to Calgary. The soles of your shoes are all worn down. The time for sleep is now. It's nothing to cry about, 'cause we'll hold each other soon. Black is the moon. Heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied. Illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. There's no one beside you when your soul embarks, and I'll follow you into the dark. And I'll follow you into the dark.
If the first song was illustrating why it's an important question, just because of the things we fill our life with not seeming to be enough, then the second song, I kind of wanted to illustrate the second reason why I think this is such an important question, because it's the question, isn't it, of where our lives are ultimately going. I know that's not a very cheerful subject, is it, for 7 o'clock on a Sunday night before we go back to work tomorrow. Have you thought about your death lately? But it's an important question, isn't it? If we're considering seriously, is there more to life? Ben Gibbard in that song is being very honest. He's saying, what happens when this life finishes? When you head off into the dark? And you see, he's making all kinds of claims about what's going to happen. You know, he says, I don't think there's any heaven and hell. I don't think anything significant in terms of religion is going to help me. But, he says, I'll go with you on into whatever comes after death. It's quite a claim, isn't it? Because what happens after this life forces us to ask the question, is there anything more? Just this week we've been reminded, haven't we, of just how death, in terms of the end of life, lurks around the corner, doesn't it? Like the kind of unwanted guest at the party. David Bowie, Alan Rickman, two really loved and cherished members of society, creatives who, as the papers and everyone has been saying, kind of whose candle burnt out a little bit too quickly, people seem to be saying. And as I say that, I know that some of us will kind of react in very different ways to that kind of question. Some of us will know very painfully and personally the looming nature of death in terms of what life is all about. Maybe some of us might feel kind of young and invincible, but it doesn't take very long before those questions come along, does it? And in the song that I just sang, Ben Gibbard says, I know the darkness is out there, and so actually that affects what I do now. Do you notice what he says? He says, we've been everywhere, we've done everything, the soles of our shoes are worn down, but now is coming the time when we head off into the darkness. I think that forces us to answer this question, and this is another reason why it's such an important question. Is there more to life? departing from the musical kind of illustration for a second, I want to quote from Leo Tolstoy, the famous Russian novelist, just because I think he reflects on this question very, very provocatively. He thought about the relative brevity of life, and he said this. He said, the question which brought me, this is writing in his 50s, he said, the question that brought me to the verge of suicide sought an answer without which one cannot live. He said, is there any meaning in life that my inevitable death doesn't destroy? What is it all for? Where does it all lead? What difference will it make whether I do this thing rather than that thing or nothing at all? So he's saying, as the human race, we want there to be more to life, don't we? Because otherwise, life in the here and now becomes very hard to assign meaning to. Is there more to life, or do we just have to walk blindly into the dark? The second reason why it's such an important question that's worth thinking about, isn't it? Is there more to life? The third song that I'm going to sing is a song that I wrote a few years ago, because I think, and this is where I'm going to kind of come into land in a few minutes, I think this question, is there more to life, really forces us to ask another question, and the question is this: what does it mean to be a person, and why are we here? This song is inspired by a film I watched with Will Smith in it called I, Robot, and it sounds a bit of a funny place to get inspiration for singing, doesn't it? It's basically about Will Smith, you see him on the screen there, who's a detective living in the future, who is faced with a reality where robots live and walk among us. And he spends the whole film battling with this idea that a robot could have a meaning or a kind of purpose beyond just being a machine that is kind of there to perform a function. There's a particular robot called Sonny in the film who has all kinds of hopes and dreams and aspirations in his life. He has fears and he has desires, and he has all these human characteristics. And he asks the question in the film, could those things be clues to the fact that I am made for something, that I'm not just here by accident, that I'm not just a machine made up of wires and circuitry? And Will Smith looks at him and he says, no, Sonny, I don't care what you feel, I don't care how significant you think you are, you're just wires and metal and machinery. And I wrote this song because I think that's one of the approaches that we often take to what it means to be a human. The idea that actually we're just biological machines, the result of time and chance, and blind forces working together to kind of put molecules in a certain order that create life, but there's no significance to us beyond that. So this is a song that I wrote, I guess likening us to biological machines. It's called Proteins, Bones and Blood.
High, high is the hillside, low is the country beneath. The fields are laid out like a blanket all about, with the sunlight slowly crawling underneath. And the fading light, it is golden, says the nerve on the back of my eye. And my chest is at rest, but it's swollen, as my lungs make all the air rise up inside. It's fireflies flying all around me. Haven't noticed the ground where I'm stood. Seems they know that we're no more than protein, bones and blood. Well, I found out that slow are my sorries, and when they come they never seem enough. Still strong like a storm come my worries, of whether I'll be lonely or be loved. And soft is her skin like a blossom, bright like a fire is her mind, and long is the list of the kindnesses I've missed, and faster all the faults I seem to find. Well, my friend, he told me no need to worry if you can't love her as well as you should. Isn't love just a product of your protein, bones and blood? Seems funny to me how the sound of a simple symphony, just movements and motions of air, but it lifts me up in wonder, it drives me to despair. There's a girl stood on a swing in the orchard, like a pendulum refusing to keep time, in the middle of a summer so bright and so good, underneath an August sunset sky. Why does this garden make me thankful, she asked me. Why does this music ring with unmade memory? Why does my heart seem to burn with a longing unlearned for a land I've never visited nor seen? Why does my skin seem to tingle upon me at the touch of someone that I love? Are you sure that I'm not more than protein, bones and blood? I feel sure that I'm much more than protein, bones and blood. Well, I hope it's obvious what I'm kind of getting at in that song. The last verse is still up there on the screen, kind of sums it up really. There are so many things, I referenced them in the first two verses, that we think are significant in life. I mentioned love, a relationship, a beautiful view or a sunset. I was talking about them earlier, beauty in art, or the rationality of science, or whatever it might be that we think give life meaning. And yet actually, if it's true that we're not really here for any purpose, we're just like Sonny in the film, biological machines, proteins, bones and blood, then how do you explain all the meaning that those things seem to stir up inside of us? That last verse is kind of, I picture this girl asking that question, because I think often children have a knack of kind of getting to the nub of an issue, don't they? She's saying, well, why would this place, this garden, make me thankful? Why would music seem to resonate with me as if there's an unmade memory somewhere in the back of my mind? Why would my heart burn at the touch of someone who loves me if I'm just proteins and bones and blood? How can there not be more to life in light of all those things? Francis Crick, who was one of the guys who was instrumental in discovering kind of DNA and some of the building blocks kind of that are part of who we are, he said this, kind of summing up the opposite view. He said, your joys, your sorrows, your memories, your ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will, all those things I just mentioned, he said, they are in fact no more than the behaviour of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. Or to quote someone else, which is not up on the screen, Nietzsche famously said, the cruel irony of life is that we come from meaninglessness and we are going towards meaninglessness. And in that song I'm asking, and I wonder what you think, is that enough? What if, as I wrote in that song, the reason we have those longings is because we were made for something more? Just to come back one last time to the film, the thing you discover with the robot Sonny is that, as you probably guessed, Will Smith is wrong. Because there is a very good reason why Sonny has all those feelings and hopes and desires. It's because he's not just random, he's been created by someone lovingly, and he's been designed with a specific purpose in mind. And part of the film, sorry to spoil it for you if you've never seen it, it's been out for ages, so you've had enough chance. Part of the point of the film is him discovering who he was made by and what he was made for. And that's where I kind of want to land at the beginning of this series that you're having this term, and asking this question: what if that's true for us as well? What if there is more to life? What if our longings for there to be more to life, if it's Lily Allen kind of questioning the things she feels alive with, if it's Death Cab for Cutie asking, well, what about when we die? What if there was more to life? C.S. Lewis, I mentioned him at the beginning, there's going to quote come up on the screen. He said this, he said, creatures, we as humans, we're not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists. A baby feels hunger where there is such a thing as food. A duck only wants to swim where there is such a thing as water. If none of my earthly pleasures satisfy, it does not prove the universe is a fraud. Probably earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy it, but only arouse it and to point to the real thing. So I'd just like to finish by sharing something very simple, one verse from one of the accounts of the life of Jesus. Jesus is the person who, as you may know, stands at the centre of everything that Christians believe. He's the person that on whom the Christian faith and its claims stand or fall. He's the most, I would argue, hugely significant person probably in history. I don't think that's controversial. He's affected the world more than any other single person. And the reason why he's had so much of an impact on our world is because he claimed to have an answer to this question: is there more to life? He's once said this, and it's there up on the screen. It's from John's Gospel in chapter 6. He says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. And he's saying something remarkable there, which is expanded in the rest of that chapter. He's saying that hunger we all have inside of us that I've illustrated tonight with those songs, for there to be something more to life, that thirst for satisfaction, that question we have in the face of death and darkness, it's not a trick of your brain. It's real because there is more to life. Do you see what the illustration he uses is bread and being hungry, isn't it? And he's kind of saying, as humans, we're like a stomach that's made to be full up. We are more than just proteins, bones and blood. Jesus is saying we are designed for a particular thing, and like Sonny in the film, we're designed to know and be known by the God who made us. He goes on in the rest of the Gospel account, which you'll be looking at if you were to come along to the Alpha course, which is starting tomorrow. He talks about the fact that we live in a world as people who choose to live life outside of that relationship of knowing God, sort of rejecting and missing the thing we were made for. And so he's saying here, it leaves us hungry, it leaves us searching, and it leaves us in big trouble. Because to be cut off from the source of life, the one who gives all those good things, is serious and has consequences, both now and into the future. He's basically saying that as humans, the reason we feel like we're searching for whether or not there's more to life is because we're kind of feeding on stuff which is good, but in itself was never meant to satisfy. When I was a student, I used to love going to the Pizza Hut all-you-can-eat buffet. Does anyone sort of enjoy going to that? They still do it. I think it's like £6, isn't it? And it's amazing because you can sort of eat for a week when you're a student on just a few quid. But in the Pizza Hut all-you-can-eat buffet, there's also the salad bar. And you can eat all you want at the salad bar as well. But you'd be a fool to go into Pizza Hut, pay your £6 and spend all your time at the salad bar. Because it's not the main course, is it? It's not the real thing. It's good, but in itself, it's not what you went into the restaurant for. It's meant to, if I'm not pushing the illustration too far, lead you to the real thing. In a much more profound way, Jesus is saying, I'm the bread of life. That thing we're looking for, that thing we need, that thing we're made for, knowing the God who made us. He said it's in me. that you find that satisfaction. I think it's quite a good place to start if you're investigating what Christians believe, because it's such a common idea that being a Christian or being religious or going to church is just one of a list of things that you can do to improve your life. It's January, isn't it? And everyone's starting new diets, everyone's reading new books on how to be successful in the new year. And there's this common assumption that being a Christian is kind of something that some people do to kind of make you a better person and help you get on in life. Jesus says, if that's what you think it's about, you couldn't be further from the truth. He's saying it's much bigger than any of that. Being a Christian it's about the claim that Jesus answers this question fully. Is there more to life? And he answers it with a resounding yes. And the more to life is the opportunity to know the God who made you, to be welcomed back into a relationship with him. And he said it's like bread that fills you up. Both, he's talking about in the here and now, but ultimately for the future. He said it's like drinking and never being thirsty again. It's like the thing your stomach was made to feast on. And so I just want to finish, before we have a chance for questions, by asking us, what do we make of that claim? Because it's a massive claim, isn't it? There might be all kinds of reasons why we might struggle to believe that. We might have all kinds of questions, and that's one of the reasons why we're having series like this. And it's one of the reasons why I do the things that I do when I talk to students. Because I do think there are good answers to those questions. But I'll just finish by saying, if there's even a chance that the claim Jesus is making is true, we'd be foolish to not at least investigate it, wouldn't we? The claim that we can know the God who made us, the claim that we can be forgiven for turning away from him, the claim that we can have security now in this life, but as that song said, on into the dark, life in all its fullness. You might have loads of questions, and what I'm going to do now is stop there. Thank you for listening so well. I hope you enjoyed the songs and things to think about there. What we're going to do is we're going to have a few moments where some background music's going to play, and I just encourage you to take the time to turn to the person next to you and maybe ask them what they thought of what I've just shared. You might like to use this opportunity as well to think of any questions you'd like to ask me about anything I've said or anything else, and I think paper is going to be passed around. Paper's on your seats, and you can also text the number and we'll try and answer as many questions as we can. It's up on the screen.
Do you want to just read that out?
I'll read the number out. It's probably a bit small, isn't it? 074 1555 3043. There we go, it's bigger at the top there as well. So we'll have a couple of minutes and then I'll come up and I'll take any questions that you'd like to ask. Thanks.
Your love is wild.
No, we're pretty much there. Great, thank you. Right, do you want that? Well, thank you for the questions you've submitted. In no particular order, we'll put them to Lewis. First question, why does us wanting there to be more mean that there is something more? This is poor logic. I want lots of things, doesn't mean I have them.
Yeah, thank you for whoever asked that question. On one level, I want to say that is absolutely right. Wanting something to be true doesn't make it true, does it? We know that in lots of areas of life. So, on one level, I want to say I absolutely agree with that sort of challenge to what I said. What I would say in response, though, is that what I think the point I made is logical, is that it also works the other way. That wanting something to be true doesn't make it not true either. One of the common, I think, ways that people explain away our desire or belief in God and religion and the claims that people make about knowing God exists. One of the common objections is we see all the kind of positive benefits of giving us meaning and other things as well, like morality or charity or whatever it might be. And because we can explain why those things are good for us and why we would therefore want it to be true, and we've sort of explained that that's a good thing, therefore that makes it not true. We've explained one of the benefits and we want it to be true, therefore it makes it not true. So I think what I'd say is, I don't think it is an illogical step to make on one level, because what we're saying is, the fact that we want it to be true and the fact that I think that is a universal longing in all humans, actually, I would say. I don't think it's true just for kind of Western culture. I think it should make us ask the question. And actually what I think is illogical, which is the point I was making with the Tolstoy quote, is the alternative. Because if there is no such thing as ultimate meaning, if we are just kind of, as Nietzsche said, life is meaningless, then I would argue we're living a lie. And I think that is the only logical conclusion. Because whether we agree on it or not, we all live as if life has meaning. We all live attributing value to things, we all live with a moral code, we all decide on that as a culture and a nation. We live investing time and effort in things like relationships and love and beauty. So if it's actually true that those things aren't meaningful at all, then I would say we're living in an illogical world, and I do think that therefore forces us to ask the question. So I hope that's not going around houses too much on that. I think on one level that's true. Wanting Christian faith to be true doesn't make it true. What I would say is, though, that once we ask the question with that longing we have, could it be true, we then come up to all the kind of reasons why it is true. And I would say, actually, the reason why I'm a Christian, and the reason why Christians believe there's a rational basis for their faith, is not just because they want it to be true, it's because of the evidence we have, namely in the person of Jesus. And because the claims Jesus makes seem to ring true with what we want to be true, I would say it adds weight to the claims that he's making. But I agree that the question is a good question, that wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. However, when it rings true with the evidence we have of the person of Jesus, and I could talk about lots of other evidence, that does add weight to the claim, I think, and it forces us to at least investigate further. So I hope that's a start. If you want to come and ask me at the end about that, we could have a long discussion about kind of alternative epistemological arguments as to what could be true. I'd love to talk to you more about that.
And that's why, for many, the journey to challenge and to question the Christian faith is for many quite a lengthy process as you start to really investigate. Yeah, if it was just a case of yes, no, for some they come to faith very quickly, but for others it is a question of really grounding and really getting those questions answered. And this is just but one of them. So thank you for that, Lewis. What is the Christian answer to the ultimate source of satisfaction?
Great question. Well, I hinted at it at the end of my talk, and I'll expand a bit on that now. The Christian answer is that we are made to be satisfied by knowing the God who made us. Very simply, the Christian story, true story of why we're here and who we are, is that we were made by God who gave us the world we live in, and he wants to know us as we live in it. So in terms of ultimate satisfaction, the claim that Jesus is making is that the ultimate route to satisfaction is to be restored to a relationship with the God who made you and loves you. And that's what he claims to have facilitated. That's why he came, and that's what the claim of Christianity is. So it's a hugely provocative and on one level controversial claim, because it's saying that ultimately we will never be satisfied until we're restored to that relationship we're made for. And the story the Bible gives us is that, in a sense, the world that we see around us is on a journey to the day when God will set his world right, and people who trust him will be restored to that relationship forever. That's the claim the Bible makes, and that's where the Bible says we'll find ultimate satisfaction.
And to have a life that is joyful or fulfilling. Third question. In this ever-pressurized life, especially the business world, the working world, why do you think people don't see God as the answer and instead struggle on to cope?
What's the first part of the question?
So in this ever-pressurized life, especially the business world, the working world, why do you think people don't see God as the answer and instead struggle to cope?
I think I can probably answer that in a couple of ways. I think one way to look at it is I do think that as a culture, I think we are very confused about the answers to these big questions. I think it's quite striking actually that these questions are out there, and you don't really have to be a philosopher or kind of sort of a highbrow thinker to just think, what's life all about? Why am I here? What happens when you die? Those aren't kind of philosophical questions, they're just everyday questions. I know we don't ask them every day, but they do matter, and we all have to confront them. And whether we like it or not, we all have working answers to those questions, because we have to get on in life. And so we do fill our lives with work and play and pleasure and all lots of great things. So I think on one level, maybe one of the reasons is that people just don't ask the questions because life is busy and it can get full and crowded. And also, as I mentioned, I do think there are some very unsatisfactory answers which we kind of assume, like, science has disproved God, or there is no real meaning in life, just get on with it. And I think people often just kind of assume that's true without really thinking about it and thinking about the logic of that. Another answer would be, so that's one kind of way of looking at it. Another answer would be that the Bible also tells us that we willfully turn away from the God who made us. And so within kind of life, whether it's kind of day to day deciding to sort of disregard the claims of Jesus and walk away from him, or whether it's just through kind of ignorance and laziness, the Bible says we all turn away from God. We all have hearts that naturally want to kind of walk away from him, which again is one of the reasons why Jesus says, if you were to read on in John's Gospel, that he's come. He said at the beginning of John's Gospel that he comes into a world of darkness, a world that has rejected God, to bring light to people who need it. So there's kind of I've sort of given you two different answers there, and I think probably, because I believe what Jesus is saying, I think they work together. I think we choose not to look at these things, and that's why I think it's so important that we do.
And do you think also because people think, well, what are people going to think of me if I start to, search and go along to church or go along to different things? What are my friends going to say? And it's almost a pride thing, perhaps.
I think it could be, and I think also, it's not popular for all kinds of reasons, is it, to talk about truth claims in today's culture and society. But that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important, actually, that we question what we believe and discuss it and have these kind of discussions and conversations. Because I think a world where truth is just completely relative is a world that very quickly falls apart in terms of the way we actually find ourselves living.
Yeah, great. It's an intriguing question, this one.
Okay.
How do we know the Christian reality is the most liberated we can be? How do we know that God isn't lying to us, or there isn't some greater reality?
That's a very good question. I'll probably take it in two parts, actually. So I suppose the first one is how do we know the Christian reality, the one I'm describing, is reality, and there isn't something else, some other meaning that... I think I'd say that's the question that we need to ask. The Christian reality that I've described is not the only sort of game in town, if you like, in terms of an explanation for who we are. I outlined one of them for you, the kind of reductionist, materialist view, that we're just kind of here by chance and there is no ultimate meaning. You could argue there are others. There are lots of competing claims as to what life is all about. In terms of how do we know the Christian claim is true, we have to, I think, investigate it and test it. And I think we see, and this is the reason why I'm a Christian, because having spent a few years thinking about these things and challenging my own beliefs and talking to other people, I am more and more persuaded that the Christian worldview answers life's big questions in a way that competing claims don't. But that's something that we all need to think about, I think. But the idea that we can't adopt a view of what the meaning of life is, I think is a fallacy. We all, either consciously or subconsciously, do adopt a worldview about what we think life's all about. And I think what's really important is, is it true? Does it work? And does it explain ultimate reality? I'm, as I've been saying, persuaded that the claims of Jesus explain reality more adequately and more in a more all-encompassing way than competing claims. So that's why I'd say I think I'm not persuaded there is a bigger reality, although I'm sure there is more to God's reality than I understand, of course. The second part of the question is really interesting. How do we know God's not lying to us, I suppose, in the claims he made? That's a really interesting question. I think what I'd say is, if you look at the claims that God makes, and the claims that Jesus makes as God on earth, and the things he did, and the reason he came, I think we have to ask, in what would persuade us that what he says he's come to do and he's come to give us would make us think that God is kind of playing tricks or lying to us? There's a verse in the New Testament in the Bible that says God has shown us how much he loves us. That while we were sinners, that's people who were turning away from God, Christ, Jesus, died for us. He's saying God has demonstrated in history how he feels about us, that he's willing to take the consequences of our rejection of him on himself. He's willing to win us back. And that is because the Bible talks about a God who is, at his very core, defined by being a God who is loving and wants our good. So I think my answer would be, I see no reason why, in what I understand from how Jesus reveals God to us, why God would lie or sort of try and trick us. That to me just seems illogical, the claims that he's making. And what would he have to get out of it?
And the death that he died was so utterly brutal that that would be unthinkable almost.
It would certainly seem illogical to me. What would God have to gain? It seems to me Jesus gives up everything in order to make a way that we can know God again, and it costs him everything. So to me that's not God who's trying to lie to us and trick us. But again, that's why it's worth investigating what Jesus claims to do on the cross.
Thanks, Lewis. It's true that we're all searching for something, but how do we know that Jesus is not just a placebo who seems to work?
I think that's kind of like the first question I asked. So a placebo is a thing that makes us feel good, but there's no real substance to it. So just to reiterate, really, I think the fact that the Christian faith works and explains things and makes us feel good about life, and I would stress, being a Christian doesn't solve all of life's problems. It's not kind of just become a Christian and everything just is sunshine and roses for the rest of your life. But that doesn't mean it's not true. And I think the fact that it seems to explain so much of life forces us to ask the question, could it be true? If you like, any claim as to what ultimate meaning is, I think has to satisfy two kind of basic criteria. I think it has to be kind of intellectually satisfying, it has to logically work, and it also has to be existentially satisfying. It has to make sense of who we are and our experiences. I think that's a good question to ask of any claim about meaning, whether it's atheism or materialism or another religious view. it has to be intellectually satisfying, and it has to be existentially satisfying as well. And as I've been explaining, I think the Christian worldview fulfills those two criteria in a way that competing claims don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I've said enough about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. If you are not being taken over by fear and life is good, with the future seemingly secure, does it always take a bad circumstance to open our eyes to our need of God and creating a space for the Holy Spirit to intervene?
I think I'd say no. I think where their question's coming from is saying, does it always take some kind of crisis, or Liliana was talking about the kind of crisis of what she believes, crisis of faith really. She's not a religious person, but she has this crisis of faith in kind of materialism. And I think I'd say no, that's not the way that a lot of people come to consider the claims of Christianity, although it is for some. And for lots of people, those are the reasons why we end up asking these questions. It's funny, isn't it? Tolstoy, the quote I used, there was another bit to the quote which I couldn't put up because it was quite long, but he said, for a while we can often live intoxicated with life, but he's implying that at certain points things happen in life which force us to answer these questions. So I think it's true that, you know, we can just kind of go through life and things seem good, and it's probably more true when we're young, but not exclusively, when we have health and maybe we then have wealth. But I think at many points in life people do start to question these, you can say, bigger questions because of circumstances. But, you know, for me becoming a Christian, it didn't take any particular tragedy in my life. It actually took kind of my parents taught me things, and then when I went to university I questioned those things, and I had people who thought different things, and I had to kind of decide whether or not actually there was any truth to the things I believe. So I don't think it's exclusively the way that...
It would be interesting to compare whether younger people tend to, you know, come to faith in different ways to older people who are perhaps more set in their ways, living life as they do. Whether they, you know, many of them perhaps have a jolt or something that triggers them to think about what life's all about.
And you mentioned kind of the idea of a journey, and I think that's quite a helpful phrase, that some people have lots of questions that need working through, and that's good. And I think that it's important to get answers to those questions. I'm not for a moment suggesting that this is something you just jump in with kind of blind faith. I don't think that's what faith is. I think faith is actually a settled trust in the evidence we see about who Jesus is. For some people that takes a long time, for some people it's very quick. So there's no sort of prescriptive way that journey has to go. I think what's important is that we are open to embarking on that journey and investigating these things for ourselves.
And that's significant that people are here tonight questioning and listening, rather than having an apathetic view that, oh, I'm all right, and just carrying on through life without giving any thought at all.
I think so, because I think these things are important, and I think even people who wouldn't agree with me and would have very different views, I hope would agree that it is important that we at least ask these questions. Which is again why I do what I do.
Good. Final question. How can I be sure that Jesus is the answer to this evening's topic?
There you go.
The big question.
How can I be sure that Jesus is the answer to this evening's topic? I think, I've said it again, but I'll repeat myself. The person of Jesus is the person on whom the claims of Christianity stand or fall. So you can be sure by listening to what Jesus says about who he is with an open mind. I often say to students, you know, you can read an account of one of the eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life in an evening, especially one of the shorter ones. You could come to the Alpha course and ask more questions and hear more about it. The claim of Christianity is that God has done something in history so that we can know him. He stepped into the world as a man who could be touched and who walked with people and who spoke and who taught. And the way you could be sure, the way you can take the next step, is to investigate that for yourself. I would urge people not to just take my word for it or anyone else in it, but to investigate that for yourself. And in terms of being sure, I think that's I've made a slight tangent, but I think that's a very interesting idea, because I think often we think we have to kind of be 100% convinced about something before we take the next step. And I'm not sure that really works with most of life, actually, not just religious questions. I think with a lot of decisions we make and the way we live our lives, actually what we do is we investigate things, we gather the evidence, and then we decide whether or not these things are worth trusting, and we make steps forward. I think that's just the way that life works. And as we talked about this journey, thinking about who Jesus is, it's no different to that. So I would say, if you don't have all the answers, if you're not 100% sure, that's not a reason not to keep looking and taking the next step. And often it takes more kind of faith to go backwards and discount all the things that we might have been challenged by, or the answers we've had, than it takes actually to go forwards. So in terms of being sure, yeah, I would
and that's a challenge that for those who don't accept is to sort of challenge oneself to say, why is it that I believe that all these things are untrue, and that all the things that society says are true.
I think that's a very good point, and yeah, if I may, I'll just end with that.
Yeah.
Is that if you are not persuaded by anything I've said, and you're not persuaded by any of the claims of Jesus, and you don't think it's worth it, I think you need to have good reasons for discounting that. Jesus needs explaining away one way or the other, and I think actually it takes more. Personally, I think it takes more faith, if you like, or blind faith, to discount the claims that Jesus made, to explain why he had the effect in history he had, to explain the things he claimed to do, to explain the historical evidence, to explain all kinds of things. And we need to have another explanation for all those things if we decide that what he said is not true.
Yeah.
And so there's no neutral ground, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, should we leave it there?
Great. Lewis, thank you
very much for listening.
so much for being put on the spot, not knowing what the questions are, is a very difficult thing to do. So thank you to Lewis for being put on the spot, and for what you've done with the singing and speaking tonight. So that's the end of this evening. Big Questions evening. We have subsequent evenings on the 21st of March when Michael Otts will be speaking on Isn't Faith Just a Crutch for the Weak or a Virus of the Mind? And on the 20th of March, Michael again, Isn't the Resurrection Ridiculous and Irrelevant? And that just comes the week before the Easter weekend. So I would reiterate again, we have the Alpha course starting tomorrow evening at 7:30 here at Woodbury Avenue. It's a meal to start with, and then discussions, and a real opportunity to ask questions about the Christian faith. Any questions that you've got, you can bring up, and hopefully answers will be given. And it is a journey. The Alpha course runs from tomorrow through to the 14th of March. For all those who've gone on it, I can't say for all, but for the big majority, there is people are very, very happy and enjoy the evenings hugely. Great meal, great company, and a real opportunity to really have those challenging questions and listen to questions that other people have got as well. So I would recommend certainly that to you. If you have any further questions tonight, then do please speak to Lewis, to myself, the Big Questions people with badges on, or even those that you've come with, just to really try and get some clarity if you have a real questions there. There is a bookstall in the church hall afterwards where there's a range of books that you may be interested in, and we've got teas and coffees as well that are being served with donuts as well, I think, some of those that are left over. But thank you again. Thank you to Lewis. Thank you to you for coming along. We hope you found that enjoyable, and look forward to seeing you again here at Woodbury Avenue. Thank you.